welcome back. This is Schauer Thoughts with Sarah Schauer. I'm Sarah Schauer. This episode is going to be how to become the person you want, or pretend to be the person you want. The old saying, like, fake it till you make it, it has a lot of science behind it. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we are going to be going the route of method acting and getting into character and how to inhabit or embody a character, which can help you, embody a character and then, kind of develop your range, right? A lot of people have typecast themselves as a certain type of person. And I'm here to say that you don't have to typecast yourself. If everyone is always telling you the exact type of person you can be, that's them, right? They're not the director of your life. And if this were a play, right? If they're not the director of your life, if they're not even the casting agent, right? Then why does it matter what they're going to say about, like, if you're the type of person who does this or doesn't do this? So you can expand your range, and we're going to talk about the psychological effects of method acting. I am going to obviously touch on neuroscience. And I did, before we get into that, I don't know if you guys noticed, but this past Sunday was National Book Lovers Day, and I do have a bit of a haul in front of me. I'm also going to talk about the book that we will be discussing or touching on during this series, because when it comes to embodying a character, right, you need to have a high degree of kind of agreeability. You need to suggest to yourself like different character changes, and so we will have to be entering flow state, which is an altered state of consciousness. And I do have the book Flow, and the author's name I cannot pronounce. Let me try to spell it out for you. So this is the book that I will be touching on, Flow, to get into an altered state of consciousnness. It's by Mihaly. That's his first name. Last name Csikszentmihalyi. I imagine it's beautiful, pronounced out loud. I unfortunately cannot pronounce it out loud, but it's a national bestseller. It's The Psychology of Optimal Experience. I know that we usually stick in the realm of neuroscience and sociology, because what I like about that method is you can kind of like factor yourself out. If you go to the cellular level of like neuroscience, physiology, medicine, all these things, and then you skip individual psychology and go to sociology, you can kind of like factor yourself out, because a lot of people only interpret things in reference to them. However, if the two reference points are cells and groups of people, it's going to force you to relate to the groups of people, right? And have to find yourself within others. And it does kind of encourage empathy. If I were to speak on an individual psychology level, then you'd have to you'd apply it immediately to yourself. If it doesn't apply directly, then you're going to be like, no, this entire lesson, I don't really care for. So you understand when it comes to, comparing yourself to groups of individuals, like an entire group, you understand that there's going to be some nuances, ambiguity, but you're still going to extend empathy nonetheless, because they are human beings. Now, if you choose to relate on the cellular level, that is actually quite interesting. I know that's going to be like a lot of people who are probably more technical with stuff, just because it does require a lot of very nuanced language. So the people who will find themselves on the the atomic, like, molecular level, they're going to be probably people who have a highly technical understanding, and they already do kind of nuances. Anyway, I'm not saying that anyone is less or more nuanced. I'm saying if you factor out individual psychology. But now we're going to be approaching psychology and, how to embody a character. I did want to touch on the books that I got for National Book Lovers Day, and I do apologize. These are all going to be nonfiction, but you will love them because I explain them, and you're going to, my emotions should be contagious. I hope that you guys are in your car right now, smiling ear to ear. And some of you are like, that's not how I function. It's okay. Whatever. Okay. Get into this. I just finished Your Conscious Mind. I finished annotating it. It was so much fun. And so I was like, I'm going to go to the bookstore. I went to this really small bookstore in Santa Barbara. The first book that I got is called The Tao of Physics, an exploration of the parallels between modern physics and Eastern mysticism. Now, Tao is like Buddhism. However, it has heavy poetry undercurrents, right? Like pull. And so, like I've said in the past, like emotions and, riddles especially are poetic equations. And in the Tao of Physics, they were talking about nature presents only riddles, right? Not statements. So a lot of the largest mysteries in our lives are straight up riddles. And the thing is when it comes to like physics or math, right, there's a lot of equations involved. And so poems, if they're emotions distilled, physics is like so the Tao of physics, it's going to be poetic equations, right? And so there is going to be a parallel drawn between modern physics and Eastern mysticism, spirituality, right? And so I've talked about how I love studying consciousness and awareness. Now, this is not a one-to-one translation, but this is a general ballpark understanding. If someone is talking about consciousness, they are most likely referring to soul. If someone is talking about awareness, they are most likely referring to spirit. Now, I don't you shouldn't really use those words interchangeably because they're not the same thing. But like if you want, if you're trying to translate, right, and you're going to give a rough, like this is kind of the arena they're talking about. So the Tao of physics, it's going to talk about, since Eastern cultures emphasize awareness more, it's going to be talking about feelings and spirits. And so emotions, within the body, thoughts are within the head. And I mean, your brain does interpret the signals from your body, but they don't, the feelings are coming from like your body. So this is going to be the physics, the poetic physics of your body. In terms of Eastern mysticism, they're going to set up a parallel, right? So they run alongside each other. And I've been going through that. I already started annotating. It was kind of funny. Like they were like, physicists and mathematicians have beef, even though like they're cut from the same cloth. But they were like, yeah, the super abstracted language. Math is like extreme abstraction where it's kind of flattened to like 2 dimensions. And so the world is 3D. They're like, they have to cut out so much, it's anyway, but they both kind of deal with the same issues. But I have a Western version of it, kind of. So the Tao of physics is the first one, and I will link all this in the description. The second one is the meaning of proofs, mathematics as storytelling. So like I said, if they're talking about the Tao of physics, right, and physics is, there's talking about like different like matter and energy and all this stuff, and right, emotions follow the laws of physics. That's going to be like emotional, poetic, like it's gonna be poetic equations. And so the meaning of proofs, mathematics as storytelling. Poems are different from stories in that stories are more straightforward, incredibly, like they're more direct. And so mathematics is a lot more abstracted. It's very direct. Okay, so but that's not to say that math is without it telling a story, obviously, like with symbolic logic and all this stuff, you can still tell a story. However, the symbols are going to be incredibly compact. So this is kind of the West version if you don't want to go through a mysticism sort of way, or if you don't want to go the physics way, then the meaning of proofs, mathematics as storytelling, which is so cool because I've actually read the geometry of grief, and I've talked about this before when it comes to editing or like writing a story. So the Kubler-Ross grief curve, which is the actual like psychology grief curve, it does mirror the best way to like tell a story, where you have like surprising events and then you have like denial, and then you get mad about it and then you bargain for a bit and you're sad, and then, your hero climbs the, ladder and they accept it or they defeat whatever. So the thing is, I mean, why that matters is your long-term memory is episodic, right? So your life is actually like a story. And so, if you have the left side of your brain is more logical, it's not totally logical, but like right side is more like creative, expressive. And so if the logic is going to, the meaning of proofs, this is like the structure of the story, the plot, and then the poetry, the physics is going to be like the flourishings and like the different variations. So it's cool, right? Your life is a story, and your brain, consciousness, I guess, is like your reality. Okay. So, I mean, it depends on who you ask about consciousness. I mean, we're guys, like, what I mean? Like, it's like, who's right, who's wrong? But no. Okay. So, consciousness is your reality. And so the logic is going to be the structure, the meaning of proofs, mathematics of storytelling. So this is the storytelling structure. And then the Tao of physics is going to be the emotional, like flourishing, like the sort of, so it's kind of like building. Isn't that cool? And so, yeah. I think that's really cool. And then this book, hopefully you guys are still with me. I do not like reductionism, and it's where you kind of like see the world in black and white. I am a huge fan of STEAM, not STEM. We don't do STEM here. We're STEAM. We don't pit the arts against the sciences. So this is a book by Eric R. Kandel. He's the winner of the Nobel Prize in physiology/medicine, but he wrote about reductionism in art and brain science, bridging the two cultures. I absolutely love that. I mean, that's what I do here. Like, Your Brain on Art was my favorite book. I hate that, like, whenever... I always say, like, you know, you guys are the art, right? You're the artists. And what I do here is kind of provide the structure for the frame. And so this is not to, like, you have to cram every part of you onto what I'm suggesting or into. You build on top of this just so you have something that stabilizes understanding. And then you build and you run and you go free. So I hate when people reduce it to, oh, it's just the art or it's just the frame. Well, this is going to be just the frame. The life is not just the frame. And then another one is Dark and Magical Places, the Neuroscience of Navigation. And that is so cool because, well, here's the thing. I do talk about, like, well, your brain does map. Like, that's why I've suggested in the past mind mapping. Memory and spatial awareness are paired in the hippocampus, right? And so the reason why long-term memory is episodic is because, like, it's... you know, it's like the memories over time, you know, so a lot of people, when they have near-death experiences, they feel their life flash before their eyes. And if their life flashes before their eyes, that means that memory, long-term memory is working because it starts from beginning to end. If it were just random bursts of memories, that would show that, like, long-term memory is offline. So dark and magical. And here's the thing, like, if your brain is mapping sort of different routes, if you kind of miss like large chunks of your life, you're going to have like you're going to take some back roads. You manage to get on one highway once. And while you can reach the cognitive destination or like results that you're heading, it's going to take you a lot longer. So it's just cool to see how your brain maps so you can, you know, clear some brush, you know, okay, that's the desired path. Any city planners here, sometimes you want to make a desired path in your brain, clear out some shrubbery. And that also touches on EMDR, right? I talked about, you know, your eyes have different quadrants, and there's like top, down, right, left. And so a lot of people, when they worry about the future, they look up. And so the thing is your brain also is judging distance, like unconsciously. And so if a straight line forward is going to be shorter than an arc, in the way that so it's going to feel more, it's going to feel like it's going to take longer and you're going to worry about it. Now, if you're ruminating, you look down, right? And that's also going to it's going to, in terms of distance, right? If you look down, you look a foot in front of you, your brain's like, oh, I'm going to walk like foot to foot to foot. And the thing is if you're looking down when you're walking, similar to life, right? You're going to miss a lot of stuff. You're going to miss what's coming at you. You're going to miss people going around you. You're going to miss the scenery, right? You're stuck on, you know, you're looking down at the path and you're just watching your feet. And then also, again, when you're anxious, like you're worried about something, you're going to miss a lot of stuff too. You're going to trip over stuff. So best to stare straight ahead. That's kind of my, like, one of my brain hacks is where, like, if you're ruminating or worrying, look straight ahead, right? And then, or left to right. You know, but your brain will deal with, or talk to an EMDR therapist. I strongly recommend them if you have trauma, because that trauma, you're just going in the same circle again and again. Again, that's why the neuroscience of navigation. You're you're in a roundabout and you're stuck in the roundabout, and your brain is like, I don't know where to get off or if I can get off. And if you look right or left, oh look, there's a turn. That's a very, very simplified version of it, but it's just for like compact understanding. Oh my God, this one was cool. So this is what it sounds like, a legendary producer turned neuroscientist on finding yourself through music. Oh my God. Okay. So first off, love the arts and sciences. We don't pit them against each other. This is a producer turned neuroscientist. That is love, right? Where like usually, and that's not to like, any person who went sort of like, science, medicine, law, engineering. These are noble. I was going to recite that fucking poem. These are noble pursuits necessary to sustain life. But reading, life, music, poetry, these are what we stay alive for. To quote from Whitman, "Oh me, oh life, of the questions recurring, the endless trains of the faithless, cities filled with the foolish. What a good these." Anyway, so it's like cool that you found your creative outlet first and then went for science. Hell yeah. So this author says, we seldom think about how we form our musical taste, but those preferences profoundly affect who we are. Our favorite records can match or change a mood, synchronize our body to a groove, offer advice or inspiration, reawaken memories, help us daydream, keep us company when we're alone, and broadcast our social identity when we're with others. In this mind-expanding book, trailblazing record producer Susan Rogers, writing with fellow neuroscientist Augie August, combines behind-the-scenes studio anecdotes with the science of music in the brain to guide us on an exploration of our musical identities. And that is so cool, especially when you study emotions. Music and your ears are incredibly important when it comes to sad and related complex emotions. Now, you can most emotions have a sensory component, and the sad is going to mainly be linked to ears, right? We've done an episode on this before. And so like it's not to say that, oh, if you're sad, this is just going to like find out your identity and sense of self, and which is actually really cool because I do give recommendations on entering flow state with music, because the thing is what route I'm going to go with developing a character persona to find out who you want to be or who you could be is that, oh yeah, I should tell you this. I tried to record this episode last week, but I went stress blind. And this is relevant. So I haven't really gone stress blind in a while, but basically I can't see, or I can see like 2 dots of light in my vision. And it's kind of like everything else is like black or like kind of just doesn't exist. And so it was kind of funny. I was wrapping up that morning. I had wrapped up annotating Your Conscious Mind, and they talked about hysterical blindness, which they were like, it's an antiquated term, but it's basically where you don't have like any sort of damage to your nerves. It's just like psychological stress causes, your eyes to shut down. And so it was kind of horrifying and scary, but also really fun to test my knowledge because I love studying neuroscience. And I was like, okay, so I can't see. So this is going to be cranial nerve 2. Which is interesting. So cranial nerve 1, 2, and 8 are like your sensory nerves. And so 1 is smell, 2 is seeing, and then 8 is ocular vestibular, which is going to be like, no, cochlear vestibular, which is going to be like hearing and like equilibrium and stuff. And so 1 and 2, it's just like so cool. So I was like, okay, interesting. I can't see, but let's see if it's like a motor nerve. I could move everything, right, left, open my eyes, cross my eyes. And so I was like, okay, so I pretty much it's going to be the sensory nerves that are off. So I'm overstimulated. It was so fun. It was also horrifying. So I guess like that's, like it was like a weird thing of where like, I'm stress blind. Oh my God. Cranial nerve 2. Knowledge is so powerful. Okay, wait. If I can remember this, that means that like, higher order thinking is still on the table. Okay. Yeah, so it was really fun. But yeah, we're going to talk about flow state now and how to get into character and how to, I love the arts. And while why I mentioned going stress blind is because I was like, maybe I should talk to my therapist about having some history of, like, maybe I have like depersonalization or derealization. I'm not sure. Sometimes I don't feel real and sometimes the world doesn't feel real. And I think that my childhood set me up for that, moving around a lot in my life. No one remembered me, right? Like I would forget people because like you move around so much. And then my parents didn't really want to see or talk to me, so they didn't remember me. Like, so inside and outside the home, I like kind of didn't exist. And then obviously the 10 years of alcoholism, right? Like just completely numb. So it's like there was no feeling, no feedback at all. And then also around the time I started like drinking pretty heavily was when I went to the internet to start my career. And so I've talked about this in the past. It's kind of jarring, the difference, you guys treat me like I have something to say, and I imagine you're listening to this because I have something to say and like you enjoy my opinion, but I really can't stress enough how in real life, Rebecca's really nice. We just had like a really cool conversation. But like in real life, when people meet me, they talk to me like I'm stupid. So they are, and they're almost like heartbroken when I'm smart. You know what I mean? Like I understand what's happening. They're grieving right in front of me. I can see them go through all stages of grief. Like it's across their face. It's like they projected this sort of idea onto me, and now they're mourning that projection. Because I've talked to a lot of people, and you can always see it happen. They are surprised that I'm smart. Then they're in denial that I'm smart. No. You're not, did you watch that in TikTok? Now they're mad that I'm smart. You're probably like not even saying that right. Like, no. Like that, I swear to God, like and now they're bargaining, right? They're like, oh, but you have like a lot of time to read, right? Like it's something that like I couldn't really do. And now they're sad. They're withdrawing from the conversation because they realize I'm smart and they're like, yeah, neuroscience, cool. And then they accept it and they leave. This person fully grieved the projected identity that I could watch it on their face, you know? And so our story, you know, our potential connection just came to an end. I watched them speed run the entire story before their eyes. And so, yeah. So why I talk about like why I might have some like derealization and depersonalization issues is like just not feeling real. And then when I am in real situations, it's such a stark contrast. Like the truth doesn't match up with the proof. And so like I physically can't accept that and so why I'm presenting all this is because I know how to get into character. And this is not a brag. It's when you move around a lot, you have to be able to, first impressions are everything. And also when you move around a lot, you can be a different person. You know, I imagine if you were born and raised in the same location your entire life, there's not a lot of ability to or need to change, you know, because it's like, oh, you're always, you know, that's Cynthia, she's lived down the street. And so there's like this assumption of permanence, right? Where you kind of lock yourself into a role and you typecast yourself. It's like you're people. And then like when you start to get better, people kind of get disappointed because they're like, no, we're the same. We've been born and raised in the same conditions. And they're like pissed that you start to like change yourself. And it's like, well, human beings, like we're evolved to evolve, where we desire, we crave change, right? And so the fact that at a certain point, it's like someone, you know, people start to prevent you from changing. But so why I'm saying all this is not to be like, oh, you guys can't do shit. I'm saying you may have typecast yourself, or you may present like, you are like, how do I get into character? How do I like loosen up a bit and, you know, change my behaviors so I can see what's all out there, give myself range. And again, when you talk about range of characters, you're talking about like movement, expression, behaviors. And so if you've been locked into place, right, someone's like, this is where you're always going to be. These are the movements that you do. You're the type of person who like shoulders hunched, you kind of like tight hips. I don't know who's paying that much attention to you, but like you seem like locked in. Right. And so you need to give yourself the range, the ability to change, but you also want to do it in a way that doesn't kind of, it's not like too jarring. It doesn't I was going to fuck you up, you know, where you're like, okay, I'm becoming this whole different person. And then that's like way too much of a change and you can't sustain it. And so the thing is like, when you give yourself range, right, think of it like, I mean, like you have range, like a singing range, you know, where you have your normal speaking voice, where like this is who you normally are, right? But if you want to take it up or you take it down, right, you have the ability to go up and go down. Now, if you're trying to maintain a very high note for a very long time, obviously you're going to run out of breath and be like, you know, and snap back and be like, oh, that's not something I should do. But when you develop range when it comes to characters, I don't want you to live in like the characters, because I talked about disorders of dissociation, right? And I know that any person with dissociative identity disorder or any sort of dissociative disorders, you're like, oh yeah, living within an extended range, like outside of body or like inner persona, like obviously that causes like mental distress, and you know you should work on it with the therapist. And if you do have any sort of dissociative identity or like dissociative disorders, I would definitely run this episode by your therapist. I'm so happy that when people do that, like, and I want you to be completely comfortable. But yeah, so we're going to develop range for ourselves and like character. And so since I'm a huge fan of the arts, we're going to go method acting. I love acting. I mean, I was a theater kid. I know there's like theater kids who are like, yes, finally. my turn to shine. It was so funny. One time I did ask a question to my followers on Instagram stories about like acting or something like that. And every person who replied, and it was like 100 people who replied, was just headshots. Like every single profile picture was headshots. And that has never happened. Usually when I ask a question, like every type of person like answers, and I can't really tell from their profile picture what they do. But when I asked a question about actors, it was just 100 headshots lined up as profile pictures. And I was like, these people know their shit. I like that. And so this is going to be cool. This is what it sounds like. So we're going to be finding ourselves through a type of music or like getting ourselves in the mood. And let's get into it, guys. My notes app is shutting down. So let me close that out. So we're going to first start out with this article, The Psychological Effects of Method Acting. Now, we also have... I have like so many things open. We're also going to talk about character development, a guide for actors, and that's how to develop a character. And it literally, since your life is like a story, the grief cycle literally mirrors, the plot of a story. The surprise, suspense, all this stuff. It is, necessary to build out sort of like characters that you like to become. Again, it's not to say, oh, I'm going to be only that person. If it's like a really high note when it comes to a character, it's probably not the best. Or if it's a really low note, it's going to make a very inappropriate joke. But it's good to know that you're just playing a character, and when you play a character, you give yourself range and you develop actual skills that you can apply to your resting character. Okay. So, the psychological effects of method acting. Whether it's on the stage or on the screen, acting demands a lot of performers. Neuroscience and psychology reveal what happens in the brain during method acting. So the art of theater is probably one of the oldest forms of entertainment. Even now, we still kind of gather in open-air amphitheaters and all this stuff. But sitting in the dark with strangers to experience that would not be possible without the actors who take out various roles to tell the tale. Acting is far more than just pretending to be someone else. Rather, it's a complex process that requires an individual to fully embody another character, including their personality, emotions, motivations, and mannerisms. Giving acting's cognitive and emotional demands, let's take a look at the neural mechanisms of getting into character. So we're going to the level of neuroscience. Okay. Well, actually, this is psychology. The psychology of method acting. Intricate cognitive pathways and emotional processes involved in acting is relatively little understood by science. A minimal number of studies have looked into the neuroscience of taking on a role. There's a lot of, there's not a lot of studies on like the actual like embodying a character in neuroscience, which is really interesting. There's like literally like less than 20, I think. But some recent research is starting to change that. In 2019, a study published by the Royal Society Open Science examined the brain regions that are activated when method actors adopt a fictional first-person perspective during dramatic role-playing. And so also in the past, I've talked about, first-person perspective versus third-person. And so when it comes to, I feel like I kind of exist within third-person perspective where there is a detached observation. And that's why I do think I have some like dissociation issues. But the thing is I love emotions, and I love them because I can see them, but also I'm not totally incapable of having emotions. Do you know what I mean? Okay, so we're going to talk about embodying another person, a fictional first-person perspective embodiment, which is you embodying a character, right? So you're experiencing life as them, but it's fictional. And so how do you achieve that? Okay, yeah, I got a Best Buy. It's a little, I don't want to shop now. Okay. So the authors asked the participants who were in an MRI scanner to respond to a series of hypothetical questions as both themselves and their assigned characters. They found that the brain's activity in the areas involved in self-processing, the dorsomedial and ventromedial prefrontal cortex, PFC, was reduced when responding in character rather than responding as themselves. The authors interpret the observed brain changes as a suppression of self. So, when you talk about suppression of self is where you're going to get into flow state, where kind of ego melts away. So that is interesting and unique in that you're a first person perspective. How can there be a suppression of self? It's because it's fictional, right? They're literally embodying someone else, right? And so that's where I'm going to get into flow state and how you can get into flow state first before, starting to like try to, just kind of pick out characteristics that you want. Flow state is kind of like the primer for, open to suggestion. And when you're open to suggestion, you yes and you improv, right? And it's like when you're given a scene as an actor or like an improver, right? If you're highly agreeable in this, controlled context, you can respond in the present, and you're not really too worried about performance. It's like when I talked about Billie Eilish did a what was that? Like a talent show one time, and a girl who was caught in her own head, right? Self-conscious. She was not in flow. She was singing, and every time she'd mess up a note, she'd say, "Fuck, God damn it, fuck." And so Billie was like, it would just have been so much better for performance if she just fucked up the notes and kept going, right? Because when you're stuck in your head and you're performing, you're going to be, shit, you're going to actually react as yourself. So it's good to suppress self by getting into flow state. This is not a total denial, separation from self. Again, if you have any sort of dissociative identity stuff, please feel free to run this episode by a therapist. But yes, this is what's happening. So theatrical art forms are unique in that performers have to portray themselves on stage as people who they themselves are not, says Stephen Brown, a cognitive scientist at McMaster University in Canada, who was involved in the 2019 study. This phenomenon is poorly studied in the psychology literature and was not studied at all in imaging study. Yes. So children across cultures engage in pretend play. And so play acting seems to be an important developmental stage in socialization. Yes. Again, I did talk about this in an episode, the demonization of play and pleasure, right? Where if you've been typecast by society or by like your family members, right? And you started to get playful, you started to express yourself. They're like, "No, that's not right. Shut up, sit down, arms by your sides." You are literally confining yourself, And so I am going to talk about proprioception and all this stuff and awareness. Your nervous system and your muscles are linked. So there's nervous system is a two-way street. So if your muscles are locked into place, your brain is going to be like, okay, we're kind of locked in. And so like now you're like stuck on the route that you're going, right? When your thoughts are, they're like, which way do we go? Well, we're locked. It's kind of gridlock situation right now. So if your parents demonize play or expressing yourselves, art, expression, play, right? Those are going to be the level of awareness, again, Tao of physics. Yes. So if we're not allowed to play, I feel like you also feel like you're kind of relegated to your role, or work kind of makes your life, and you can't really see anything, any other options. You don't have a lot of range. You're just going to be like, well, damn, I'm stuck like this. So yes, it's good to start play acting, or just like, ease into it by expressing yourself, which involves, in this case, actual movement. That could just be yoga. Shadow boxing and dance are really great for loosening up and getting into flow, and it's really kind of compatible with different centers of gravity. Like shadow boxing is, great for anyone who's has center of gravity is higher. Dancing, great for anyone whose center of gravity is lower. That's not to say that you can't do it if you got wide hips. Go ahead and shadow box. I'm saying, when it comes to something to consider, it's also kind of interesting. A lot of men get into flow state by fighting, because center of gravity usually is much higher, and a lot of women get into flow state by dancing, center of gravity, and it's just ease of movement, right? Accounting for where the mass is. That's not to say, again, men are fighters, women dance. You can do anything you want. It's just like a suggestion. Okay, so examining actors' brain activity. A more recent study also found that theater actors might be suppressing their sense of self to an extent when acting. The authors of a small 2022 study in the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience used wearable brain imaging technologies to record actors' brain activity when performing a role. The PFC usually gets activated when an individual's name is called out, but when the actors heard their own names during a performance, the PFC response was suppressed, right? So that means that they've taken on a different persona, right? When you say someone's name, right, their name is the ultimate representation of identity. And so also if you say someone's name, it's a command, like if someone says Sarah Jane Schauer, that is a command, right? You're literally, that is who I answer to. That is not only like that's the label, but also internally, I answer to Sarah J. Schauer. This person is no longer responding to their actual name, so a persona is being embodied. Okay. We thought that a robust empirical way to measure an actor's self-prioritization in the brain was to measure their response to their own name whilst acting versus not acting. And so imposing name call events provided insight into the processing of the self and the situations that may suppress it, which in this case is being in character. These findings about the neurocognitive phenomenon of acting encourage further research into the brain activity of theater actors in and out of their roles. Also, this could be something like... if you've ever talked to any drag queen, right? When someone calls a drag queen who is in drag by their out of drag name and they're kind of like disoriented by it, right? Because the thing is like they're literally not that person right now. And drag is incredibly personal and it's like a craft. And so like it's genuinely disorienting for them. So they're kind of suppressing self. They are. So is method acting dangerous? Embodying a character and invoking realistic emotions to tell their story, whether it's on theater stage or a film set, can blur the lines sometimes. Characters can take over the actor's self and have them doing or saying things they normally wouldn't. For instance, somebody performing as an angry woman may find themselves being short-tempered around everyone. A 2019 literature review reported that blurring the boundaries with a character may result in a change of personality or even dissociation. So we are trying to utilize this study for change of personality, right, to become who we want. Now, again, it could lead to dissociation. So if you want to run this episode by your therapist, I strongly recommend it. And also, therapists, if you are listening, every single resource is linked below. Every single one. Okay. So it has been reported in mainstream media that acting techniques such as method acting can have severe effects on the actor's mental health. When an actor goes too deep in a role, especially for a long period, they may find it challenging to drop the character after shooting Black Panther. Okay, yes. So the thing is also where we can see a dividing line between actors and us is that actors also do have to consider finances, as this is their job. So it's also a needs situation, right? Where like this is kind of different in that we want to pursue like a range where like need is more like establishing the structure. Like I've said, like if you're Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like you need food, water, shelter, and so this is going to obviously be more dire. If it's in the need category of emotions, we are more wanting it to explore identity and like ways that we can, open up our range of behaviors. So this is want, and that's again, therapists. This is great that you're reviewing this. I love you. Okay, so the psychological impact of acting. At present, a large gap in research. I would hypothesize that an actor's training technique will influence the distance actors create between themselves and their character. The distance will then determine whether they are long or short-term effects on the sense of self. Yes, and so we're going to actually read the Royal Society Open Science, the one study that they kept referencing because I love neuroscience, and I got tagged in when an episode goes live, people will tag me on their Instagram story of them nicely driving to work, or like there's like cute like drawing supplies set up, or like someone's having a nice, and then I'm like, okay, I can only imagine you're trying to learn something, and then I say like fuck or shit or pussy. Oh my god, wait, I have to tell you guys. I'll tell you later. When we're cooling down, I topped a punch, and I loved it. Okay, sorry. Sorry. Oh my god. You know what? We'll keep it in. So, okay. The Neuroscience of Romeo and Juliet, an fMRI study on acting. The current study represents a first attempt at examining the neural basis of dramatic acting. While all people play multiple roles in daily life, for example, spouse or employee, these roles are all facets of the self, and thus of the first-person 1P perspective. Compared to such everyday role-playing, actors are required to portray other people and to adopt their gestures, emotions, and behaviors. Consequently, actors must think and behave not as themselves, but as the characters they are pretending to be. In other words, they have to assume a fictional first-person, FIC1P, perspective. In this functional MRI study, we sought to identify brain regions preferentially activated when actors adopt a fictional first-person perspective during dramatic role-playing. In the scanner, university-trained actors responded to a series of hypothetical questions from either their own 1P perspective, or from that of Romeo, male participants, or Juliet, female participants from Shakespeare's drama. Compared to responding as oneself, responding in character produced global reductions in brain activity, and particularly deactivations in the cortical midline network of the frontal lobe, including the dorsal medial and ventromedial prefrontal cortices. Thus, portraying a character through acting seems to be a deactivation-driven process, perhaps representing a loss of self. So, method acting, a deactivation-driven process. And that is actually quite interesting. Well, that is 100% interesting because when you enter like flow state, it is a state of consciousness where it's kind of consciousness and awareness kind of have to be synced. And so that is going to be more like motor, awareness generally does refer to body. And so like body movements with thoughts, like thoughts and movements are kind of like linked, and how you portray and how you move, like your mannerisms, your behaviors. So when it comes to character study, right? Oh my God. I was also reading a book on language development, and I think it's called The History of Language. But what we notice about people when we learn a language, or like when children learn a language before words, is rhythm and intonation. And so like the accent, like the movements. And so if you want to embody a character, not just like speak their language, it's good to notice just like how things are flowing together and how things are moving. And so that same thing is happening with flow state. And I will talk about getting into flow state. But so when you're trying to embody another character, it does, you know what, let me just get to the character development part. This will have to be a two-parter, but I'm excited about it. So when it comes to developing character, what you need first is the premise, right? Let me get to this. So character development, a guide for actors. Nope. You know what? We'll keep this in. Being indecisive is not something to be ashamed of. We're going to keep going through the neuroscience, and then I'm going to talk about premise. Okay, so dramatic acting is the process of portraying a character in the context of a theatrical performance where the actor pretends to be someone who she is not. However, theater is not the only context. Yeah. Dramaturgical approaches to social behavior argue that social interactions obligatory involves the playing of situation-specific roles. So you need to take on a different role. Now, we could bring in the sociology of it all, right? You're given a role as oldest daughter. You are the oldest daughter. You're supposed to take care of everyone in the household. You have been parentified, right? You're supposed to be attracted to someone who's the youngest child, and you're supposed to take care of them. Why did my voice get all weird? Take care of them. And then you're supposed to go to couples therapy, and you're supposed to discuss how you're not their mom and they're an adult and they can do chores, and it's going to be hard, but they're going to have to suck it up, right? Or like you're the gay best friend, right? You're just comic relief. You're a side character. You're not allowed to have your own thoughts and opinions unless it's, damn, you look great in that dress, right? A lot of people have been socially prescribed roles, and especially the thing is the only people who are really allowed, that's why we have imposter syndrome, right? You feel like you're, this is not the role for you. You know, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be in this business setting because this business setting was not originally made for someone like me. And unless you can immediately transform to a cisgender heterosexual white man who comes from an upper class family and is well connected and went to an Ivy League school like that, then of course you're going to feel imposter syndrome everywhere else. How you get rid of imposter syndrome is that you realize you're qualified to be here, or else they wouldn't have hired you. And then also you give yourself range. You give yourself character like depth and meaning, and you develop the skill. And so you're not an imposter. You're like just, this is the role you're now playing in this context. And then when you leave work, you're like, okay, that's done, right? A lot of people will like clock out at 5 and they're like, I'm not doing anything. Yeah, because you're doing a role. You were hired for this role. And so like if you're taking on a role in the work environment, just take on that role and then shed it when you leave. Compartmentalizing is not always a bad thing. But yes. Okay, so such roles vary with the context of the interactions and the nature of the interaction partners. The same person can play the role of a mother with her child, daughter with her parents, wife with her husband, boss with her employee, and customer with a salesperson. While the behaviors associated with these diverse roles may be very strongly, the roles themselves are all facets of the self and thus the first person perspective. These variants of the self can be thought of as a series of personas that are recruited in different social contexts. Yes, and so a lot of different celebrities, like famous celebrities, do have personas. The two biggest ones that I can think of right now is Beyonce with what is Beyonce? Sasha Fierce, and then Megan Thee Stallion with Tina Snow, right? And so when they're both incredibly hardworking women, but if they like to embody or like give off another sort of persona, they absolutely can do that. And it's completely separate from self. Megan Thee Stallion already is like a stage name. And so Tina Snow just kind of extends, it shows more range, or Chapel Roan is a stage name. It is a persona. And Chapel is not under the illusion that she is Chapel Roan. I mean, this is just a persona, right? It's something, your art it's first person perspective fiction, okay? And so this is created and perfectly curated. They're basically like living paintings or living albums, where you embody your artwork, which I think is incredible. And it's just a way that you can kind of separate, right? So if you want to create, you could make a Tina Snow or like a Chapel Roan persona for your work environment. And so why that would kind of help is that, you're like, I'm going to grin and bear it, right? I suck this up. And then when you leave there, you're like, if they hated that persona, that's not even me. You hate me at work, that's not even me at work, right? And so that's great for like your mental health. If you're like, if I go to work as like Sarah Schauer and then people beat up Sarah Schauer, then I'm going to go home and be like, well, damn, Sarah Schauer. But if I'm Golden Shower, oh, God. Just incredibly inappropriate name for the workplace. And they're like, you're like stupid and dumb. I'm like, well, I'm in character. So I'm just comic relief. And then I leave and I'm like, it kind of reminds me of the Scream movies or Scary Movie 1, where Doofy is like just walking off. And it's like, I'm not actually a dumbass. And if you needed to think I was a dumbass for me to survive the day. Because the thing is I understand, fuck capitalism, but if you need to create a persona for self-preservation in a capitalist system, again, run this by your therapist, because that does enter into another. But I'm saying a lot of people make personas, and it's a way to kind of express yourself. This is why I love neuroscience. So, oh my God. If you make a persona, that is a method of expression, but also a method of self-preservation. That is flow, intuitive flow, or double consciousness, where it's like, oh my God, that is so cool. And then we enter the realm of code switching. Oh my gosh, this is so, so cool. God, sorry. I just, when something is both a method of expression and self-preservation, you're going to enter double consciousness, which is going to be double awareness, which is going to be fictional first-person perspective, right? If it's the method of expression, oops. Or, oh God, it's good. Or self-preservation. Oh my God, sorry, I just love that. Okay, yeah. These variants of the self can be thought of as a series of personas. Many acting teachers, in fact, use this as a starting point for actor training. However, playing a character in performance involves a more comprehensive transitioning into a role than playing one of our everyday personas. Actors are required to portray other people and to depict their gestures, emotions, and behaviors. They are required to live through a set of circumstances and perform a set of actions distinct from their own lives. Actors have to perform on stage not as themselves, but as the characters they are pretending to be. They thus have to assume what we call a fictional first-person perspective, in which the I of their statements applies not to themselves, but to the characters who they are portraying at the time. So acting can be thought of as a form of pretense, in particular the act of pretending to be someone who the actor is not. And so, oh my God, this is the cool part about projecting. You know how I talked about how someone projected an idea onto me and then they grieved it? You can also project, right? Like when you enter a space, you project that idea And that's what people meet. And so how you project that idea is you kind of like adjust your, well, obviously the visual components, right? You tell a story, right? Like, what character do I want to be? Instead of maybe dressing up as, I mean, I do go for comfortable clothes. Sometimes I really like scaring the shit out of gay people. I love you guys. But sapphics are quite easily scared sometimes. So wearing any sort of leather, any sort of black eyeliner, anything that's more, dark academia, and then so that projects an image, right? And I do have a extensive academic knowledge, and so I can maintain that, right? And just being aware of like the gestures. And so the thing is when it comes to leather, that naturally constricts, so you're going to move and behave in a similar way that if someone is being constricted or likes being bound. This is quickly TMI. I did pick up Submit, a memoir by Sonnet, which is a story about submission and control. I do enjoy, from time to time, relinquishing control. You can project a certain image, and then obviously, how you dress does help you get in a character. And so I will be talking about that with like flow state. But for example, if you have ADHD and you really want to start cleaning your house, but you need help, you're like, with the ADHD, I can't get organized like this. I put some tennis shoes on, clean tennis shoes or like running shoes, right? And it will kind of signal to your brain, get up and go. And that's kind of like when you put on a bra, right? You could also do that. It's like normally at home, you're not, I haven't worn a bra in forever, but like if you put on like an underwire bra, that signals to you, oh, I'm going somewhere else, right? Like it's a cue, it's like a character cue. It's like a lighting cue, right? The same thing like with sort of like, the stage, right? Oh, you're cueing now, right? This is where you get up and go now. So if you put on running shoes, and this is, I don't like to wear shoes in the house, but these are I have shoes that are just for inside. When you put on running shoes, you're now cued and you're like, all right, now I'm getting up to go. And you're also probably not going to lay down easily with running shoes on, or you're going to hang your legs off the bed. And then that unnatural position will still keep you in character, because it's like, I don't normally lay with my legs off the bed. This is unnatural and I can't get comfortable. Therefore, yeah. So it's nice to have clothing to help you project an image. Some people do change their accent. I wouldn't do that unless you're really good at the accent. And unless you really are sure you're never going to see these people again. I would say the most thing that people do to project an image, edit a character, is their voice. Hey guys, how are we doing? Are we doing great over here? Yeah, not only do they deliver their lines, but they also make us believe. You could do that. Guys, oh my God. Or you could go lower, like, hey guys, the premise, the etymology comes from the Latin word, premisa, meaning sent forward. But that's like, it's just kind of, that's probably the most you're going to change your voice. Women tend to go higher, a lot of intonation, like kind of questioning tone, just because if, you're socialized in a patriarchy, then it's going to be like, well, a woman, it kind of has to phrase everything like a question, because if you say it with certainty, men are going to be like, I don't believe that coming out of your mouth. And so you have to kind of put in that. Do you guys think that it could be like a cognitive dissonance? Does anyone feel like it could be cognitive dissonance? And then a man's going to be like, I think it could be cognitive dissonance. And then they'll be like, oh, dude, you're so great. So yeah, normally in society, when we talk to dudes, we go a bit higher. But also the gay voice. This is so funny. This is so many mashing together. I'm just setting up the I'm excited for this. But gay voice is not just for dudes, more effeminate. It's also like for lesbians. Lesbians do go kind of lower with their voice, but I think it's just because we're like, fuck the gender roles, that sort of thing. Like you don't really go as high. Because you're like, that's not who I am anymore. Identity. And so like if you find yourself changing who you are in front of others to be compatible with them, it's not, you could be highly flexible or have an unstable sense of self. So it's really, it's uncertain. Anyway, let's keep going. Yes. So, Yes. However, much less attention has been devoted to the pretense of identity and therefore the portrayal of characters that permeates both pretend play and theatrical acting. So, again, we're going to have to get into role playing, and role is, something that confines, but playing is something that releases. So, role playing, it's going to be structured play. And so, any sort of game, right? An acting game to like ease into it. Because the thing is, and a lot of people, when it comes to taking on different characteristics or behaviors or like adopting something, you feel kind of cringy doing it. You're like, oh, this is like so embarrassing to like, I don't know, try to be funny or try to be sexy. And when normally I'm like a doofy nerd, like this is not what I do. Yes, it's cringy because cringe is an acute feeling of embarrassment that comes from a violation of social norms. Social norms, if you have been prescribed a social role, right, and you're getting out of your role, that's not the norm, and people see you doing it and they see like you maybe like this is your first time doing it, and or then you're gonna cringe or they're gonna cringe, or you might cringe because you feel like this is like unnatural. This is not the norm for you. Yes, that is a very normal thing. Embarrassment is sadness. I mean, is surprise plus sadness. It's like, oh, I made myself sad. And so the thing is you can also use emotions to ease into, different characters or different behaviors. And my honest advice all the time is irony, right? If you want to develop, characteristics or behaviors but you're like, I know for a damn sure I'm going to cringe through all this shit. Cringe is kind of like a psychological pain. And so you do have painkillers that are readily available, and that comes in the form of humor, right? Irony. So joking, endorphins, right? Natural painkillers. So if you want to make something less painful as you're cringing, you do it ironically, right? You're in on the joke. You are not the joke, okay? And so that helps you kind of guide self to another, character, right? If you have a very hard time being sexy and you want to lean into being sexy, you can practice this with someone else or alone. Be ironically sexy. Now, it does take about 10 to 15 minutes to enter flow state, and I will discuss that next time. But so if you're like, you want to, flow with the character, actually be sexy, it is going to take some buildup depending on, how fast you can get into flow. So being ironically sexy for like a solid 10 minutes, and you're like, is that your brain is going to convince yourself, like you're going to be laughing, right? And it's easier to accept a message when you're on painkillers. So if you're kind of laughing at yourself or someone else is laughing with you, right? You're like, you're accepting the message, right? You're suspending disbelief, right? Because if you're like, I'm not naturally a sexy person, you believe yourself that you're not a sexy person. If you're doing it ironically, like on painkillers, right? You're like, I'm going to suspend disbelief because I cannot feel, it doesn't, like, I'm accepting truths now, like left and right. So when people, I don't like mainstream porn, but when they have those like intro scenes where it's like, step bro, oh, Jesus Christ, incest. Anyway, I made it real. Okay, well, my ex-girlfriend is coming over and she's bringing pizza and we're just going to hang out and like making it way too animated or like way too ironically sexy. You could do this by yourself, and I would recommend doing this by yourself at first. But like the laughing at yourself is going to make it less painful, and you're going to be more agreeable, right? You're going to yes and the situation, and then you're going to actually start to accept, oh, I am sexy, right? Because my body is moving sexy, okay? Your muscles are like, when it comes to flow, your consciousness and your awareness, they're in sync. Your muscles can't think. I mean, they can store memories and stuff like that, but like your body is moving sexy and it's not painful, right? And so you're flowing with the sexy and your thoughts are now like just following your body. And so what's interesting about flow state is halfway between control and arousal. So eventually, when it does come to the sexy premise of it, you will just go straight into aroused. If you want to kind of if you want to edge your own arousal, you will be entering flow state, which is interesting. But I will get more into that on the next episode of how to develop, a character, how to expand your range, methods to do that via method acting and like character development. You are not confined to a role. If you have multiple intersecting identities, then that probably just even feels like it just like you can be anything you want to be. I mean, will it be hard when it comes to like actual, like tangible, like monetary, yeah, it's hard to be. You can aim for the stars anyway, but it's just to give yourself more range. You don't have to stick on a high note. You don't have to stick on a low note. You do probably going to get some damage to your vocal cords or something, right? You stick in a character who's always elated and happy, or like, super depressed, then, speak to your therapist. You were just kind of expanding our range and then our sort of portfolio, so we can see ourselves doing more and playing more and being more, just being more dynamic, literally containing multitudes. It's just good to, not be one note. I mean, it's great if you can hit one note, but like, we should, pitch shift yourself sometimes. Anywho, that is the end of the first part of this. I did say I was going to tell you guys about topping the butch. It was fun. What did we do? Well, it was nice. Oh crap. How do I say this? I did, yeah. I got really into it. The thing is it's nice because I think topping sometimes, you actually have a bit more control in the situation. When you're bottoming, you're just kind of like, you can move obviously and like, guide, but topping is going to be more. And so I got to like kind of direct the scene, and it was really nice. And I felt like, and oh my gosh, there was just so much going on. And then, you move to the bathroom, and then there's like the counter, and, you're like just flipping and flopping around on the counter, pressed up against the mirror, and shit's moving, everything's getting hot, and then like it's starting to echo in there, and then you put down your phone, turn on voice note, and you just got like a couple 30 solid minutes of just various sound effects that are great acoustics. Anyway, it went really well. I will be going back. And that was maybe TMI, but I'm really happy that was at the end. This is the first part. Of course, everything will be linked below, and I'm excited to talk to you guys next time. I'm sorry if I disturbed some of you, but yeah, I think I'm going to be topping more. The only thing though, issue is I do have carpal tunnel, so if my hand's in a certain position for too long, it's going to lock up like a claw. And then you're like, you don't need to use and I know that I don't, but like there's something so. There's something so sapphic about using your hands. You know what I mean? Like face and strap, yeah, and knee. And, but, sorry. I feel like I'm limited. My character is limited, and so I just got to go back and get some steroid injections in my wrist. And I do have some PTSD from breaking my nose from someone sitting on my face. So, it's just like I'm very delicate when it comes to face and hands, but it's only because I'm seriously, I've been very harmed before, but I need to, yep. So there's a lot of stuff to deal with my doctor when it comes to, I'm going to talk about dissociation and carpal tunnel and PTSD with my face. But I do like topping. It's so much fun. Anyway, it went really well. And thank you guys for joining me in the communal shower. We will talk about more about developing character through method acting in the next episode. Thank you guys. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and rate me 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, any place you get your podcasts. And I will talk to you next time. Bye.